Hey everyone, what's up? It's Ellie here. We just got gifted another 9 minutes of pure Deathloop and I am so hyped to move through it with you and take a closer look at things, so let's go. This first clip is very reminiscent of an earlier combat clip we have of Colt in the gameplay reveal trailer, using his Kinesis power to throw people off of the edge of a bridge. Except, we're not in the district we can find Alexis, but in the one in which we are likely to find Charlie Montego. As we have seen previously, his district is very theme parkish, with lots of cardboard cutouts giving the environment of the district this comic book-like feel. On the sign on the back we read his name, Charlie Montego, above conditioned detachment, a body invasion experience, which sounds quite bizarre. Based on the notes around Charlie's picture in the Deathloop Explained video, it is suggested that he is in charge of entertainment on the island, is a sadistic game master who hates losing, and has possibly put his brain inside of a computer. If Charlie can put his consciousness into the technology on the island, perhaps he can physically control Eternalists. Perhaps conditioned detachment is the process of which Charlie takes control of Eternalists' bodies, simply something that seems like a bit of a laugh to the Eternalists, but is seen as a tool that can be exploited by Charlie. Oh, sorry, we're only 3 seconds in. Let's keep going. Here Juliana is announcing to Black Reef to ensure that they kill Colt on sight. This isn't the only version of this announcement I've heard, and I'm unsure of how many variations there are or if she does this multiple times throughout the game, but yes, Juliana gets a big old kick, making things a lot harder for Colt. She is the island's new protector, and as much as she likes to goof around with Colt, she is still Colt's enemy. Here we get a glimpse of what I believe is somewhere in the beginning of the game. The floating text on the side suggests that this is your opportunity to practice shooting with a weapon in a safe zone before you venture out onto the island's districts. Now the board here is different in comparison to the prop style board in the Deathloop Explained video. Here we have the images that someone has taken, likely before the loop began. This looks like Harriet Morse on the left. Moving on to Charlie Montego in the water with someone wearing yellow, and Fia to the right. Above Fia seems to be pictures of a surgery and an after picture, perhaps of recovery. We do get a closer look at this later. In the centre seems to be kind of like a panoramic picture of all the visionaries together. From what we can make of it, I think this is in the order Harriet Morse, Igor Serling, Wengie Evans, Charlie Montego, Frank Spicer, Fia Borowska, and Alexis Dorsey. The centre has been torn, and it's very likely that there was a Colt here in this photo, potentially with Juliana alongside him, but maybe not as likely. Above that, on the left, it looks like Colt has had his photo taken with someone. I'm not sure who he's with. It could be Charlie, maybe Frank, can't really tell, but I have this feeling where we might not know who this is, and this is potentially a photo from the night before, as it looks like the photo on the right, Colt is just not as aware that the photo is being taken. He might have been super drunk, which is why he wakes up with such a bad headache in the beginning of the game. He's constantly waking up at the beginning of the loop hungover. The photo below these two and the two on the right aren't as clear, but this one does look like it is a picture of Alexis at the very least. The pages of notes around the board are all the same note. We get a better look of them soon. We kind of get some hack and slash gameplay here that we've seen somewhat before, and some Colt versus Jules action. Now, I'm pausing here because this floating message is kind of a big deal. Firstly, I have to admit that I've seen a lot more of this game than this gameplay reveal is showing because of the press event. Unfortunately, because of that event, I kind of know things I'm not allowed to tell you, or it would just be borderline spoiling the game. But because of the type of content I make, I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place. I've been reading some discussion about these floating messages, and I just want to talk about them so bad. I also have somewhat of an answer to what they are. This might already be public, but because I'm not sure and can't find it anywhere, I'm going to assume I'm not allowed to say. But I can probably tell you what they're not. A theory I've read is that they are Juliana's prompts to help Colt. In fact, there is even an article somewhere telling people that that's what they are. During the preview event, there was a voice line from Juliana that I believe led to this idea, but I believe it was misinterpreted. And this particular message kind of shows that. We know that Juliana likes to mess around with Colt, but this floating message is trustworthy from what I know, so I wholeheartedly believe that this is not Juliana. She talks to Colt enough through the radio, and when you see this particular scene in full, you'll understand too. Because I actually know where we are, what that lever is, and what is about to happen here. This little scene I love a lot. The hand gestures and the voice lines had me in the biggest grin, listening to this banter for the first time, and hearing how loose the swearing is was refreshing. Enough F-bombs to make an Aussie feel at home. This humour brings a new level to arcane narratives. Not everything is super grim, dark, and serious. Sometimes things are funny, enraging, emotional. Here we get an introduction to Dinga Bakova, Deathloop's game director, who begins to explain the game a little bit more just like he did in the Deathloop Explained video, and environments we've seen before, so I won't focus too heavily on them. We do get a look at the 8 visionaries we're going to be hunting down, and at a glance, nothing seems out of the ordinary. Except for Dr. Wenji Evans. She seems to have a bit of a digitalized glitch type of situation happening to her avatar here. I have a theory for this in a moment. We do actually get more of a look into Dr. Wenji Evans, the environment we can find her in, and a way that she can potentially be eliminated by using the hackamajig to hack one of her own gadgets. It's very brief and looks like a very easy way to eliminate her. I feel as if from what we know, she's going to be a difficult one to find and eliminate. And maybe it'll be a bit more obvious when you kill all the visionaries when and where they need to be killed to solve the murder puzzle. There is a chance that this is just not where exactly you're supposed to kill her, and that's why it kind of seems so easy, but it won't actually finish the game. So this might be a situation where Colt has simply seeked her out to kill her and gain access to a potential power or weapon drop. It just seems too easy, as if she was an Eternalist, really. But then again, I have another theory. From what we know based on the Deathloop Explained video, it's that she is described as cold, and that she is said to have a very special power that will make Colt's life a lot harder. The notes written about her on the board point out that she can be in 2 or 3 places at once, which makes me think she could have some sort of cloning ability or projection technology similar to Doppelganger in Dishonored 2. So my theory is that this isn't actually Wenji, but is a clone version of her. It's kind of brilliant actually. Wenji might be super efficient, using the clones not only as decoys, but also to help her conduct experiments or make observations to help further her research. It's really smart. Ever wish you could be studying 2 or 3 things at once? Or finishing off multiple assignments at once because you simply just don't have enough time? Well, make a few clones. Be like Wenji here and work smarter, not harder. If this is what is happening, I am actually quite impressed. And this might be why we spotted that glitching earlier, because perhaps that wasn't actually Wenji, but a projection of her, whether that's technological or one of her supernatural abilities. Some more combat and gunplay here, and an explanation that if you die, you're technically fine. I've also seen some discussion suggesting that we shouldn't trust the writing either because it tells Colt to jump, and presumably meet his end. But we don't actually see what happens to Colt once he jumps, because the clip is cut. Just a thought. A cool blue carpeted environment, which I believe is in Frank Spicer's mansion. And a lab environment. I'm not sure what district it's attached to, but we do see an interesting looking suit on the left here, very reminiscent of Prey. I have a feeling that we could be in Fia's district, as we've seen her standing over terminals like these before, and we know that she's involved with this thing, some sort of rocket or potentially the engine that powers the loop itself. The next little scene is what I believe to be her room. My cues here are the orange round lamps on the ceiling and the bottles of alcohol, which look very similar to the ones Fia is dancing near in the Deja Vu trailer. The art piece above her bed seems to be a portrait of someone with little hearts on the top there, another visionary perhaps. Again, going back to that Deathloop Explained video, the note by Fia says, having an affair, but who with? This mural either answers that question or narrows it down for us. There is already evidence to suggest that Fia has a more intimate relationship with Charlie Montego. We've never actually seen them together, but this art, particularly from Arcane, that features all of the visionaries, and Colt shows Fia and Charlie at the bottom together as if they are looking at each other and reaching out for each other. Charlie with a cigarette in his mouth, just like in the mural on the wall. So I think it's pretty likely that Fia and Charlie might be somewhat of an item at this point. There was some discussion that it could even be Dr. Wenji Evans, but I think the cigarette throws me off that theory a little. The use of the word affair also made me assume that there was some sort of love triangle or potential cheating going on, but that might just be a misinterpretation. Perhaps the other visionaries just don't officially know about the relationship. Next up, we do see Fia over a terminal, which I think solidifies that we are looking into Fia's bedroom. We also get a closer look at those handwritten notes pinned to the board from earlier, but only a small portion at first in this frame. We see what could be an image or a drawing of someone in Alexis's mansion holding on to what looks to be a camera or potentially a projector. I can tell based on the frame of the doorway that this is Alexis's mansion. Her hairstyle is similar to Harriet Mawson, but we could be seeing someone new here. Perhaps this is why it doesn't look exactly like a photo, but more like art to be interpreted. We fade into a close-up of one of the notes. Unfortunately, I had an incredibly hard time reading it. Unlike the handwriting in the Deathloop Explained trailer, this was straight up Doctor's handwriting, and I think it might be some observational notes from Wenji or a potential one of her clones or one of the doctors that have performed surgery in the photos we saw earlier. It's hard to read any of the actual telling words. And like I said, it could be relevant to one of these particular images here that show someone having some sort of surgery likely to do with their brain. Perhaps a implant that allows the person to do new things or become connected to the experiment in a new way. Maybe allowing them to be controlled or their minds to be wiped for the next loop. The cigarettes make me think that this is Charlie Montego going through a procedure with maybe Fia watching behind in the window. Maybe procedures they had to endure before the experiment began. And maybe this is why Charlie can transfer his consciousness into the computers on the island. Or perhaps we have no idea this person is, who these people are, and the cigarette is more just telling of the time period we're roughly in, where the advertising campaigns for cigarettes were only just shifting from recommendations from actual doctors to a try it for yourself approach. It's also interesting to note the shadows in the second picture. You see the other figure taking the actual photo, but they don't seem to have the same hairstyle to the woman in the top photo. When comparing these notes, they all just seem to be the same one over and over. I'm not sure if this was intentional. Maybe Colt's trying to do what I'm trying to do right now and figure out what the heck they're saying and match them to the right scenario, but it could also just have been easily done for the sake of the preview so that the notes actually don't spoil anything for us. So now we're moving into a district we've seen a lot of from the beginning. We're hunting down Alexis Dorsey. As we know, he'll be giving a speech at this masquerade party, so we're heading down there at night. And we actually get some more proper gameplay footage as we move from the underground tunnels to the streets of the district. Some more banter between Colt and Juliana plays, but as Colt moves through the level, we hear an Eternalist saying that they have some top secret information. It's likely one of those moments when we can stop right there and listen to the Eternalist reveal something about the visionary we're hunting, or give us a clue generally about the district that can help us. Of course, we don't get to listen to the whole thing, which I think is important because we don't want little things like that spoiled for us, but Colt does show off a little creative skill by using Carnesis to throw the group of Eternalists into a proximity mine. Some more combat ensues, rather chaotically, and unsurprisingly, Colt is overwhelmed and dies. However, we now have an official explanation of reprises and a visual to show off how they work. If you remember, I brought this up in my Residuum video, but couldn't actually supply a good visual as it was something I learnt during the preview event. Reprises basically mean that Colt can die twice before being sent all the way back to the start of the day. Colt can revisit his place of death and retrieve the residuum he left behind upon death to use it to save weapons and abilities between loops. You can learn more about residuum by watching a previous video of mine where I go into a little bit more depth. Colt uses his hackamajig to hack enemy turrets and clean up a few Eternalists. After that, he continues his path forward by shooting out a security sensor before shifting past. Again, we're just getting a longer look at places we've only briefly seen before, as well as some more conversation between Colt and Juliana, and some between the Eternalists. Colt makes his way over to hack a phone booth that distracts the two nearby Eternalists long enough for Colt to blow them up and get past them. As we shift across to get to the cliff, which I think is pretty cool, and climb into this building, we finally get to hear the sound the game will make when Juliana has joined the game and is hunting you down in the district. I tried to explain it best I could in how the multiplayer will work video, but I couldn't quite describe the sound right, but now we all know. Colt is approaching his target and entering the party. We also get this funny little snippet of an Eternalist giving a speech, but it's not just any speech. Eternalists take the stage and try to impress other Eternalists with the evil deeds they have done. If it doesn't impress the others, they are sent into the grinder below and onto the dinner menu. With this knowledge in mind, Colt hangs around and waits for Alexis to take the stage, and well, we all know what happens next. Alexis's power, Kinesis, is dropped and a fight begins. Remember, Juliana is looking for Colt, so this has likely given her Colt's location and a prompt to go hunt him down. I do go through a little bit in the How Multiplayer Will Work video, how Juliana will be alerted to Colt's presence and where exactly he is by fellow Eternalists. Colt jumps through this window here and picks up what looks like little air tanks. At first I thought it could be ammo for some sort of weapon that maybe uses compressed air or some other sort of gas, but the green cross on them might suggest a health resource. There are actually some ammo boxes on the left here too. As we know, power regenerates similarly to how it does in Death of the Outsider, but we haven't really been shown much about the health regen, and this might be our equivalent to Sokolov's health elixir. We're reaching the end of the preview, as we never really get to see what happens much longer after a visionary has been hunted, but we do see some more combat, including a lean movement that Colt uses to check on the enemies he's left behind with a trap. Colt also is shown shooting something in the environment to cause a lethal explosion, which is pretty cool to know that we can do that. Another way in which he causes a really cool explosion is by taking the power supply of a turret out and throwing it at enemies, causing an explosion. This is very similar to how in Dishonored you could remove whale oil tanks and throw them to cause an explosion or shoot them. But the most interesting part about this ending is when Juliana comes in. Colt mistakenly calls Juliana Julie when she's on the radio, and she corrects him. Colt says he gives approximately 0 Fs about what she calls herself, and then we switch to Juliana's perspective. But you did, she says in person, aiming the scope for a clean headshot once, she says, ending the sentence before killing Colt. This means that we have confirmation that Colt and Juliana knew each other outside of the loop. If you've watched my Colt and Jules family video, I go through a couple of theories about how they may have known each other outside of the loop, but there still isn't really any information about how they knew each other. Juliana is super playful and a little childish in this preview. She gives off annoying sibling vibes, but that just might be the type of person she is in general. So, no answers yet, but honestly, I like that. I think there is still a whole lot to uncover about this game, and with only 2 months left, we don't have very much longer to wait. We also get this little reveal at the end where they announce if you're signed up to the Arcane Outsiders, you will receive some exclusive free items such as a unique weapon called the Ever After Strelak Verso and an Eternalist Cult character skin. I don't really know what a Strelak Verso is, but when I looked up the meaning of Verso, it seemed to mean the other side of something. Strelak didn't come up with anything in particular, but I think it could just be the name of a series of pistols, something that could have been named after a person or a family, like the Winchester rifle. So together I think it could be referring to the fact that it's a dual-wield version of that type of pistol. I actually really love this Eternalist concept. I think it looks great, but also because Sebastian Mitton mentioned how the pigments that are painted and splashed onto the Eternalists' bodies and clothing reflect their state of mind, whilst also creating visual variety amongst the characters. Perhaps a bit of blue and gold shows that you're calm, content, and successful. Black or red could signal violence, blood, dark acts, that have been or are being committed. Even though there's not exactly a whole chart that we can compare the colours to, I have a feeling that this colour scheme is like a trendy American flag type deal, with the reddish pink, white and blue. This could be referencing Colt's military past, and or his desire for freedom. It could also just be a celebratory skin for the 4th of July, America's Day of Independence. The preview happened to be around that time, but I prefer to look at it as something with a little bit more meaning than that. So there we have it. I feel as if this might be one of the very last looks into Deathloop before the game releases, so I'm very excited about that. It just means we're getting closer to that release date. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave it a like if you did. Let's talk about some of the things we noticed down below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!